When I went to Hong Kong to study, Colin Richards had sex with all the girls in the circle. He suddenly became interested in me, a plain-looking and timid person. His vigorous pursuit gradually moved me, but after being together for less than a month, he said he was tired of it. On the day we broke up, he watched me walk into the heavy rain without looking back. Some people were worried. Will this good girl commit suicide? Colin was infatuated with his new love and casually asked his good brother for help. Spencer, please go check on her for me. I'm afraid she might jump into the sea because she's so depressed. It was raining heavily in Hong Kong Island that night. I was soaked and sat on Spencer Hayes' lap. He answered Colin's phone and said in a tired voice, "Yeah, I found her. You have fun." He lowered his head and kissed my ear softly. "Don't worry, she is very well behaved now." 01. Colin called me. He asked me to go to the club he often went to, room 808, to find him. It was raining when I arrived. My hair was wet when I got off the car. I couldn't help but shiver when the cold air blew. The door of the box was ajar and the sound of singing could be heard. It took me a while to find Colin. He had his arm around a very pretty young girl. When Colin saw me, his expression didn't change at all. He even hugged the girl tighter. I stood there blankly, my mind going blank. I can't figure it out. Colin pursued me vigorously for a whole year. It's been less than a month since I agreed to be his girlfriend. Just 3 days ago he pinched my face, smiled and told me he loved me very much. But now there is another girl sitting on his lap. 100 times prettier and sexier than me. 02. Rachel Arnold. Colin said calmly, "I have a few words to tell you." The music in the room stopped. Everyone quieted down tactfully. I stood there, feeling the embarrassment of being stretched to the limit. "I really liked you before. But I'm in love, not going to a nunnery to burn incense and worship Buddha." Colin's voice was tinged with intoxication, yet still gentle. "I respect your opinion. If you don't want to, I won't force you. It's just that I'm tired of you, so let's break up." My wet hair stuck to the sides of my face. It pricked my skin and felt cold. I couldn't hear the sounds around me, nor could I see the strange looks those people gave me. She just stared at Colin blankly. "But 3 days ago you said you loved me." "Colin, it's not that I don't want you to kiss me. It's just that I'm not ready yet." "Okay, Rachel, let's not talk about this anymore." Colin raised his hand to interrupt me, still looking at me gently. "I want to break up now, do you understand?" 03. The tears that had been rolling in my eyes for a long time suddenly fell. I grew up in a single-parent family. I am plain-looking and timid. From junior high school to college, I lived like a transparent person. Until I came to Hong Kong to study and met Colin. This was the first time I was pursued so vigorously. Being held in someone's hands and cared for and loved like this. It's easy to be moved. But he said he was tired of it. Because of the kiss I pushed away? Or was it because I rejected his request for me to move in with him? I was so confused, but subconsciously I was still thinking about making amends. "Colin, can we please not break up?" "Rachel, do you really want me to say something hurtful?" Colin frowned. "I don't like you anymore. My taste is just temporarily off. Do you understand?" I raised my hand and wiped away my tears. Then he slowly took 2 steps back. "I see, Colin. Don't look for me or contact me again. Okay? Okay, I'll do it." I nodded vigorously, trying to force a smile. But in the end I couldn't help but shed tears. "I'm going to go back first and not disturb you guys from having fun." I wiped away my tears again, turned around and stumbled out of the box. 04. She's so unsophisticated. How could you like a mainland girl like her? The girl next to Colin suddenly spoke. "It's just a novelty." Colin picked up the wine glass and responded calmly. But he looked towards the door again. When he first met Rachel, he knew that she was timid and well-behaved. When he stopped her to ask for her phone number, her eyes were wide and round, as if she would faint from fright in the next second. It's still interesting to think about this. He had never met a girl like this before and found it very fresh. But that's all, he is not a patient man. It's raining heavily outside. Suddenly someone whispered something. Colin looked toward the terrace. It was a thunderstorm day, and the rain was pouring down like a river backing up. "Do you think Rachel will be upset?" "It's hard to say. The way she was crying just now, she looked like she was going to break. Colin, do you want to go check it out? A loud thunder tore open the dark sky. Colin suddenly put down the glass in his hand. Spencer. He looked at Spencer, who was sitting in a corner not far away and hadn't spoken the whole night. To be honest, Colin was not very comfortable letting other people go. Those guys are all playboys and Rachel is too obedient and honest. It's Spencer, the Prince of Australia, who is good at both black and white things. I have no interest in women at all. How about you help me take a look? If she really wants to jump into the sea, it will be very troublesome. Spencer slowly raised his eyes and looked at his friend calmly. Colin felt a little regretful after he finished speaking. Spencer is a cold-hearted person by nature and doesn't bother to meddle in other people's business. He is simply asking for trouble. If you don't bother. Good. Spencer suddenly agreed. Colin was a little surprised. But Spencer had already stood up, grabbed his suit jacket and walked out. 05. It's raining too heavily. I stood on the steps and waited for a long time. The doorman came over for the third time and asked if I needed an umbrella or to call a taxi for me. I nodded in a daze. I opened my umbrella and didn't stop. Walk into the heavy rain without hesitation. Maybe it was because of the rain. I hadn't walked far when I began to feel dizzy and uncomfortable. The wind was strong and the rain was heavy, and the umbrella in my hand was blown all over the place. It was at this time that Spencer's Rolls-Royce stopped in front of me. The back window rolled down, revealing his cold and indifferent face. His white, frozen fingers tightly grasped the umbrella handle. Subconsciously, I stepped back. I've heard Colin say this a few times. The Spencer family has a gang background. My understanding of the underworld comes from the Hong Kong movies I watched in the past. Those who are involved in gangs are all cruel and murderous. So, when I first met Spencer, I was very scared of him. I even never dared to look him in the eye. 06. Get in the car. I just took a step back. Spencer spoke. The raindrops hit the umbrella like fried beans, making a particularly loud noise. His voice wasn't loud either, but to my ears it sounded like a thunderclap. My steps froze. Open your eyes wide in panic. It was rainy and foggy, and I couldn't see the emotion in his eyes at all. It's just fear, the fear of knowing that you are as small as an ant, spreading from the soles of the feet to the entire body. I walked to the car trembling. The driver came down to open the door for me and took the umbrella from my hand. I thanked him quietly and bent down to get into the car. But my legs felt like they were filled with lead and I could hardly lift them. Wet sneakers stepped on the clean car mat. A cloud of mud and water spread out. I was so embarrassed that I didn't know where to put my hands and feet. He lowered his eyes and twisted his fingers nervously, wishing he could curl himself up into a small ball. It is best to make it transparent. The car moved forward smoothly. The car lights are as bright as snow, penetrating the rain and fog. Rolls-Royce is like a lone boat on the sea. I don't know where it will float to. I was distracted when Spencer suddenly called my name. Rachel. Exist. I suddenly came back to my senses and subconsciously looked up at the man beside me. Spencer's suit collar was disheveled and his shirt had 3 buttons open. He leaned back in the seat, his long legs casually spread wide. Like a dormant lion, he remained silent yet carried an intimidating aura as if he was in control of everything. I looked away in panic. My heart beats like a drum. Where will the car go? What would Spencer do? Kill and dismember, or tie the body to ice and throw it into the sea? Worst case, sell it on the black market. But I don't think I have ever offended him. He raised his foot and his leather shoe lightly kicked over the leg of my jeans. He tapped his knee with his slender fingers. Come over. I just felt a loud bang in my ears. She looked at him with wide eyes, heat boiling on her cheeks and neck. 07. Can't understand? Spencer raised his eyebrows slightly. Come here and sit here. He said it again. The speaking speed slowed down a bit and the Mandarin was quite standard. I heard it clearly, but I was just dumbfounded. Until he got a little impatient. The car suddenly jolted. I felt like my heart was about to burst out of my chest. All kinds of messy, bloody images flooded into my mind. My nerves were instantly stretched to the limit. Before the brain could react, the body had already chosen to protect itself. I almost crawled onto his lap using my hands and knees, She even obediently followed his signal and sat in a straddle position. Spencer's lips curled slightly, handing over a soft towel. "Wipe your face." I took it obediently. His cell phone suddenly rang. Spencer picked up the phone, swiped it to answer, and said lazily, "Hello, Colin. 08. The towel fell right out of my hand. Spencer looked at me and suddenly smiled. "Yeah, I found her." His voice sounded very low in the enclosed space. "You have fun." Spencer held his phone in one hand. With the other hand, he gently pinched my jaw. It was raining heavily and the vision was unclear. The car suddenly shook a little, and I was caught off guard and lost control and moved forward. Spencer's thin lips just brushed the side of my face. The breath was warm and ambiguous, brushing past my ears. I was completely frozen. Spencer didn't push me away. Instead, he pecked the corner of my lips. When he spoke again, his voice was slightly hoarse. "Don't worry, she's very well behaved now." The moment the words fell, the call was cut off. In a closed little world separated by partitions, Spencer's fingertips rubbed my jaw, pulling me closer little by little. "Rachel." He applied a little force with his fingers. I frowned and had to open my mouth slightly, but she just happened to receive the deep kiss he gave her. Colin doesn't like good people. But I like it. He kissed me so deeply and hard that I was too clumsy to breathe. It was almost impossible to breathe. Spencer paused for a moment and reached his long fingers into my sweatshirt, clamped the soft flesh on the side of the waist and kneaded it gently, until my breathing became disordered and my eyes were filled with tears. Her fingers grasped his sleeves, tightening and unclenching them, so tense that her nerves trembled slightly. "Don't be afraid," he said soothingly and bent down to kiss me gently. "Your first time we weren't here." 09. Until the early hours of the morning. The heavy rain slowly stopped. Colin stood by the French window. He absent-mindedly lit a cigarette. My friend came over and sighed. "Rachel is so timid. I don't know how scared she is right now. Spencer shouldn't make things difficult for her. You know the prince's personality. He always hates women. Especially the crying ones." Colin exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "It would be nice to scare her. You liked her so much before and pursued her for a year. How come you're tired of her after just 1 month? It's boring. Like a piece of wood." Colin smiled and said, "I won't let you kiss or touch me. I'm not a monk. Take your time. Rachel looks like a good girl." Colin leaned against the glass, a faint smile in his eyes. "What do you know? After this incident, she won't take advantage of Chow anymore. You still have the means." My friend couldn't help laughing. "How could that little girl Rachel possibly beat you? From now on, I will listen to you and let you do whatever you want. I won't bully her." Colin put out his cigarette and said, "Don't have any contact with her for a few days. Give her the cold shoulder for a while." "Okay, I'll wait until the day you get the beauty." "What kind of beauty is she?" "Rachel is fair and pretty. How can she not be a little beauty after dressing up?" Colin laughed again. "Why haven't I seen you guys praise her like this before?" She had just arrived in Hong Kong and was still a little bumpkin. I've noticed that in the past few months, she has become more well-groomed. Last time you guys went out, she wore a green dress. Tisk, 2 thin legs so white that they're blinding. The smile in Colin's eyes suddenly disappeared. "What are you talking about?" "Haha, that's quite unexpected. After all, I was really inconspicuous when I first arrived." Colin turned away with a cold expression. "If you like her, why don't you go after her? Rachel's heart and eyes are filled with only you. I won't do such a shameful thing." This sentence pleased Colin. His expression relaxed a little. I thought to myself that I had originally planned to ignore her for a month. Let her learn her lesson and obey me in the future. Now that I think about it, half a month has been about the same. After all, Rachel is timid, sensitive and crybaby. 10. When I came out of the shower, Spencer was already on the patio smoking a cigarette. He was shirtless, wearing only a pair of navy blue pajamas underneath. The trousers hung loosely around her narrow waist, revealing a muscular chest and neatly arranged abdominal muscles. I stood there uncomfortably. I didn't dare to step forward or speak. The words Spencer just said in the car. It is still churning in my heart like thunder. "Are you not coming yet?" Spencer put out his cigarette and looked back at me. It doesn't seem to be raining outside anymore. I pursed my lips nervously. Spencer's house is really big. If he doesn't let me go, I won't even be able to find the exit. Spencer turned around and leaned against the white railing to look at me. What do you want to say? His hair was half wet, and his unfathomable eyes seemed to be stained with cold moisture. I plucked up the courage to look at him, then quickly lowered my eyes. The voice became smaller and smaller. I want to go back to school. Going back to school so late at night? A classmate of mine has rented a small apartment near the school. I can use that for the night. Are you afraid of me? I shook my head subconsciously, but my face became paler and paler. Spencer didn't say anything but just kept his eyes on me. From head to toe, he examined her inch by inch. The house clothes I was wearing were prepared by the maid. The navy blue satin fabric is the same material as the one on Spencer. At first glance, they look like couple outfits. It's not impossible for you to go back to school. I raised my head suddenly and looked at him with wide eyes. When Colin talks about Spencer, he often says this. Spencer has a bad temper and is extremely difficult to get along with. But now he seems to be very easy to talk to. Rachel, come here. I hesitated a bit but finally went over anyway. The most important thing now is to get out of here. So it's best not to annoy him. I stood in front of him but still about 1 meter away. He is taller than Colin. I was wearing slippers and could barely reach his chest. How long have you been talking to Colin? I pursed my lips instantly. Hearing the name Colin, my heart felt like it was being stabbed by needles and the pain was intense. As soon as Spencer finished speaking, my eyes were already red. 1 month and 3 days. I remember it quite clearly. Of course I remember it clearly, after all, Colin was my first love. This is the first person I like. Why don't you let him kiss you? Spencer held my jaw and asked me to look up at him. My tear glands are swollen and painful. I don't want to cry for Colin. But he still couldn't live up to expectations, and tears gradually formed in his eyes. I'm not stopping you, I'm just not ready yet. I turned my face away, trying to break free from Spencer's hand. But he squeezed tighter. I kissed you in the car just now, wasn't that very good? 11. When he mentioned the mess that happened in the car, I couldn't help feeling more aggrieved and angry. If I hadn't been so scared and panicked, I wouldn't have let him do whatever he wanted and lost my first kiss. Are you scared of me? Spencer sneered. I won't eat you. But you kill people. Who said I would kill someone? That's what they all said. So you're being nice because you're afraid of me? I lowered my eyes and said nothing. Spencer let go of her hand and his voice suddenly turned cold. You can stay here for the next few days. Don't want. I was so anxious. You just promised me that I could go back to school. I'm just saying it's not impossible to go back to school if you want. What do you want me to do to go back? I don't want to miss classes. I tried my best to get to be an exchange student this year. I just want to graduate successfully and get a job. Then, completely escape from your original family. It's simple. Spencer reached out and brushed away the slightly wet hair on my temples with his slender fingers. Kiss me first. A moment? Spencer seemed to be amused by my naivety and stupidity. Kiss me till I feel good. My eyes widened little by little. I can't believe how someone can say such disgusting words so openly. Spencer suddenly put his hands around my waist. With just a little force, I crashed into his bare chest. He looked down at me, his eyes slightly lowered. There was a hint of minty smoke in the air. Rachel, if you can't kiss me to my satisfaction. The corners of his thin lips curled up slightly. The sea is just outside the door. I will throw you in with my own hands and feed you to the fishes. Under the hot palms, my skin was trembling. But Spencer tightened the grip even more. So much so that my body and his were almost perfectly fitted. The fear I felt when getting on the bus swept over me even more violently. I opened my mouth and my tongue was a little tied. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, How can I kiss you to your satisfaction? 12. Spencer looked at the little face in front of him without any makeup. Not very pretty. The eyes are not big and the eyebrows are light. The double eyelid marks are very shallow and fan-shaped, with only a slight arc at the end. But the eyelashes are very thick and long. The bridge of her nose is not very high, but slightly upturned in a childish way. The chin is also round and has a small dimple. Probably the biggest advantage of my whole body is my fair skin. The frame is smaller than that of an average person. As he held her in his arms, there was only one word in his mind: soft and boneless. Spencer thought of her sitting obediently astride his lap when she was in the car. My hair was wet and my face was covered with moisture. He kissed her lips, which were soft and bouncy like jelly. That's quite strange. She hadn't initiated the kiss yet. He just thought about the intermittent kiss in the car. There has already been a reaction. She looked at him now with wide eyes. Only his face was reflected in the dark pupils. His eyes dropped to her pouty lips again. After taking a hot bath, her lips returned to their original bright red color. He was a bit mean and wanted to dirty her. Want to know? His fingers fell and caressed her lips. She seemed particularly sensitive and her whole body began to tremble slightly again. Spencer smiled and said, "You'll understand in a moment. Now kiss me, Rachel." I have never initiated a kiss on anyone. Spencer is too tall. I have to stand on tiptoe to touch his lips. Maybe the atmosphere was too ambiguous. Maybe it's because Spencer's face is so bewitching. My head is spinning. The moment my lips touched his, my whole body felt so hot that I felt like exploding. "Open your mouth." Spencer's voice was a little hoarse. "Ah." I looked at him stupidly with wide eyes. The moment his lips slightly opened, Spencer suddenly took the lead. He penetrated deeply and kissed hard. He held me in his arms, almost crushing me. "Rachel." Spencer's warm palm fell on my eyes. "Close your eyes." The rain had stopped for a long time, and suddenly it started to fall again. Raindrops hit the glass one by one. In the huge bedroom, the man's breathing gradually became heavier. About half an hour later, the noise in the room finally calmed down. I rubbed my sore wrist. "Stand up and kneel on the bed." Spencer leaned against the headboard and leaned over to kiss my already swollen lips. "Are you tired?" I nodded. My wrist was sore and painful. My lips are also swollen and numb. There was a very strange smell in the air. Looks like musk but isn't musk. I couldn't help but think, looking at Spencer's expression just now. It seems like, it feels good, right? Can I go now? Spencer seemed to be in a good mood and nodded. "You can walk." I was just about to rejoice. But he said again, "But you have to come over tomorrow night." "Why?" I was extremely surprised. "Didn't you feel great just now?" Spencer frowned. "I can say this, but you should not keep it in your mouth. It was fun though." "But you're too stupid." Spencer's eyes fell on my hands. "You are clumsy, but you still have a lot to learn. But you're obviously feeling comfortable." He really had to admit that. The excitement brought by this youthful clumsiness is obviously beyond imagination. You make your choice. Either do it to the end, or come to my place every night. 14. I didn't struggle for a few seconds. Every night. Whatever it is better than doing it to the end. This has been ingrained in my mindset for more than 20 years. You can't sleep with a man until you get married. Send me a copy of the class schedule. I'll pick you up then. I boldly offered my opinion. Can I come here by myself? If Spencer comes to pick me up, it will definitely cause a sensation in the whole city. But I don't want to be noticed. Don't want to be the center of attention. Don't worry, I'll find another car. Where do you have a low-key car? Spencer has changed the subject. Bring me cookies tonight, the kind you made yourself. Did you know I can make cookies? There was no emotion in Spencer's voice. You've given it to Colin several times. He didn't like it, but I thought it tasted pretty good. He didn't eat anything? No. I was a little dazed and felt a little sad, thinking about the desserts that I made with great care, but Colin had never touched them. Although the item is not expensive, it is a token of my appreciation. If he doesn't like it, he can tell me. But you shouldn't just throw it to others like this. Sleep for a while, I'll take you back to school in the morning. Spencer reached out and pulled me into his arms. I was about to break free, but he grabbed my hand and dropped me down somewhere. Don't move. If you provoke it, you will be the one who gets tired. I immediately tensed up and dared not move. Spencer chuckled. Very well behaved indeed. Go to sleep, Rachel. 15. I begged Spencer all the way. Only then did he agree to park the car one intersection away from the school. When I got off the bus, I plucked up the courage to make my request again. When you come to pick me up tonight, can you still be here? Spencer leaned back in the car seat and looked at me. Are you afraid of being seen by your classmates? I'm still afraid Colin will find out. I clutched the hem of my shirt, lowered my eyes and said in a low voice, I'm afraid. Why are you afraid that Colin will know? I can't answer that. Probably because we just broke up last night. Maybe it's because of the unclear relationship between Spencer and I. I don't want to be talked about. Colin and Spencer are not from the same world as me. I actually figured it out this morning. Colin should just be a temporary novelty to me. I misunderstood it and thought that he liked me. Once you figure it out, you won't feel bad anymore. As an ordinary girl like me, I have never dreamed of being Cinderella. After this incident, I should thank Colin even more for making me more sober than before. I just want to study hard. Spencer, I know you're just having fun teasing me. When you find it boring, don't look for me anymore. I took a deep breath and looked at him. We will no longer have any connection, so there is no need for anyone to know about this now. Do you think I am right? Spencer's face grew colder. He didn't answer but raised his hand to signal me to get out of the car. Then the car drove away without stopping for a second. I stood there for a few seconds before slowly walking towards the school. 16. Colin gave his new girlfriend 999 Freud roses. The news spread like wildfire throughout the school in an instant. After all, Colin had pursued me for a year. I was with him for just over a month. Now he uses the same tactics on his new love. The deep affection we had before has become a joke. Some people laughed at me, and some girls I had a good relationship with also stood up for me. But I didn't show much emotion. As usual, I went to get out of class and then to the library cafeteria. After the afternoon classes, I went to a handmade bakery and made some cookies. Spencer didn't come, so he sent a driver over. But he just took away the cookies. Mr. Hayes has to go back to Macau today for some business. The driver was a middle-aged man with half-gray hair. He was very kind and friendly when he spoke to me. So, are we going to prepare cookies tomorrow? I'll come back to pick it up at this time tomorrow. Okay, Miss Arnold? Okay. It's settled then. I didn't see Spencer for almost a week after that. But small cookies have to be made every day. On the 7th day, the driver asked me to prepare double the amount of cookies for the next day. Mr. Hayes has ordered it to be used tomorrow night. I didn't ask any more questions and just nodded in agreement. When I go back to school, I happened to meet Colin sending his new girlfriend back to school. The moment we looked at each other, I calmly looked away. She walked past his sports car without even glancing at him and headed towards the school gate. But Colin called me. Rachel, what's up? Colin hugged his girlfriend, but his eyes were still gentle when he looked at me. It's like this, Chloe really likes the cookies you made earlier. I have a friend's party here tomorrow. Could you please make some more? Of course, I'll give you triple the reward, okay? I shook my head and refused. Sorry, I have a paper to write these days and don't have time. Colin raised his eyebrows slightly. That's a shame. I didn't say anything else and turned to walk into the school gate. But that night, when I came back from the library, Colin stopped me downstairs of the dormitory. Rachel. Colin wore a simple white shirt. It looks a little familiar for some reason. Took me a while to remember. This was the shirt he wore on the day he accepted his pursuit. I once said that I really like him wearing a white shirt. Looks particularly gentle and clean. What's up? Are you angry today? What are you angry about? I asked you to make cookies for my girlfriend. No, I really don't have time. Spencer wanted a double portion of cookies, so I naturally didn't have time to earn Colin's money. You only have one class tomorrow. I have other things to do. Rachel. Colin suddenly took a step forward. The lights in front of the dormitory building are warm orange. It made his features look even more gentle. During that month of dating, Colin sent me back many times. Right under this light. He was tempted to kiss me, but there were a lot of people coming and going at that time and I was too shy, so I pushed him away. Would you like to make peace with me? If you feel that we moved too fast before, we can talk slowly this time. After you graduate, we can live together, okay? The warm light fell on his handsome face. This was the first man I liked and my heart was moved. I can't deny that until this moment, I still feel a little sad. But in the end I shook my head and refused. The smile in Colin's eyes gradually cooled. I won't give you a second chance. Don't regret it, Rachel. 17. It was just 7 o'clock when Spencer arrived at the club. He took 2 paper bags from the bodyguard. A faint fragrance emanates, mixed with a hint of rose scent. Rachel added a little wax apple syrup to the cookies. She said this fruit can moisten the lungs, relieve coughs, and clear lung heat. Very suitable for eating in the current weather. Actually, he doesn't really like sweets. It's just that now, perhaps it's because I love the person and the people in him. The waiter opened the door of the box respectfully. When Spencer came in, Colin was sitting on the sofa smoking. His face looked a little gloomy and he seemed to be in a bad mood. Everyone stood up when they saw Spencer. Colin also put out his cigarette and stood up. Spencer, why did you stay in Australia for so long this time? Spencer smiled and placed the paper bag on the coffee table. I had some personal matters that delayed me for a few days. Colin was about to speak when his eyes were suddenly drawn to 2 paper bags. What's this? Biscuit. Spencer took off his coat and handed it to the waiter. He picked up a sofa and sat down. His voice was as lazy as usual. It tastes pretty good. I eat it every day. Would you like to try it? Colin's face gradually turned pale. But he still reached out and picked up a paper bag. When the familiar scent hits, he also saw the familiar seal on the small box inside. Rachel's cookies. Rachel likes to make cookies and cakes. She has a cartoon stamp that she always prints on the small box of cookies. She had done it to him several times. But he doesn't like sweets, so he always throws them to others. Even though Rachel had only made cookies for him. Even if this feeling is exclusive to him. But he never took it to heart from beginning to end. But now, the snack marked with Rachel's name appeared in Spencer's hands. What does it portend? Colin was a little dazed. He stared at Spencer blankly. I want to ask, but I inexplicably resist the answer that I already know. Spencer's cell phone happened to be ringing. He picked up the phone and asked in a deep voice, "Where are you?" "Lost." "Fool. Stand there and wait. I'll come down to find you." He hung up the phone, stood up and walked out. Colin asked stiffly, "Spencer, what are you doing outside?" Spencer's expression showed some impatience, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. "Go pick someone up. She's so stupid that she can't find the way. Who needs you to pick him up in person?" Spencer looked at Colin as he put on his suit jacket. He is always casual and relaxed when interacting with his friends in private. People always forget how terrifyingly powerful his background and origin are. This time it was rare that he showed some strong and powerful pressure. "Of course, the one I like." 18. The garden of the club is too big. I stood under a flowering tree, feeling somewhat bored. Spencer asked me to stand there and wait. I just obediently stopped walking around. Several white villas are shaded by lush green trees. I had no idea which direction Spencer would appear from. But inexplicably, the uneasiness in my heart has gradually faded away. I sat down on the bench and dangled my legs, until the tall and straight figure appeared on the winding path. It slowly emerged and became clear again. "Rachel." Spencer called my name. I looked at him and forgot to stand up. The night wind seemed to have quieted down. There are faint sounds of insects chirping in the pond beside me. The man who approached me had done something very intimate with me. But after not seeing each other for a few days, it feels so strange. Spencer reached out and grabbed my jaw. He lifted my face up to a perfect angle for him to lean over and kiss me. Then, he kissed her without any hesitation. My breath, the oxygen in my lungs, my consciousness. One by one they were stripped away and taken away. At the end of the kiss, there was a sound of water. The back of my neck was burning badly. I was afraid that someone would spy on my privacy in the dark and quiet night. At the end, Spencer kissed me hotly on the ear and said, "Come back with me tonight." I haven't spoken yet. But the corner of his eye suddenly fell on a spot not far behind him. Colin just stood there. His face was darkened by the night. I couldn't see the emotion in his eyes. 19. Spencer noticed something was wrong with me. He straightened up and looked behind him, following my gaze. "Follow me." Spencer laughed and reached out to pull me up. "Hold in your arms." Spencer, I think you need to give me an explanation. Colin's voice was relatively calm. What explanation do you want? Spencer turned his face and kissed me on the cheek. Now, do you understand? Spencer. Colin's expression became increasingly ugly. It's not appropriate for you to do this. What's wrong? You know that Rachel and I. Didn't we split up? Spencer was also restless with his arm around me. He pinched the soft flesh on my waist from time to time. Aren't you afraid that she would jump into the sea and ask me to go find her? I was afraid that she would be upset, so I asked you to help me take a look, but I didn't ask you. Colin still couldn't utter the word poaching. He did break up with Rachel after all. After all, he ultimately didn't have the courage to say that to Spencer. Colin. Spencer looked down at him. You don't want people. I like people too. How come you like her? Colin was completely stunned. I also looked at Spencer in surprise. But I can only see his handsome and three-dimensional profile. Why can't I like her? Spencer hugged me tighter. She's very kissable. He's a very good person. The cookies are delicious. Most importantly, be kind. Obviously, he is very timid. When encountering problems, he is not afraid at all. Facing those yellow-haired thugs, the little girl didn't know where the courage came from. Rushed forward to protect the girl who was working part-time. He was kicked hard. He did not loosen his hand protecting his companion. Maybe he was attracted by this contradictory quality. For days afterwards, he would always think of Rachel that day. He was so scared that his face turned pale. He cried but refused to move an inch. But he was a big step late. At that time, Colin had been pursuing her madly for a long time. And she soon became Colin's girlfriend. Until that night, Colin suddenly went crazy and wanted to break up with her. 20. I hid from Spencer for a long time. Colin approached me several times, but I didn't meet him. Later he blocked me several times downstairs of the teaching and dormitory building. I had no choice but to meet him once. Rachel, you don't want to get back together with me because of Spencer, right? It's not because of him. Colin, we're not a good match. It's not just you, Spencer and I aren't suitable either. I will return to the mainland right after graduation to continue my postgraduate studies. I won't be coming back again. Rachel, I admit that what I did before was wrong. Colin looked a little depressed. But after we broke up, I found that I still like you. But I don't like you anymore. So do you like Spencer? Colin's eyes were red. I saw you kissing that night and you didn't push him away. I was silent for a moment. I actually didn't know how to answer. First I was afraid of Spencer. But I don't know since when I stopped being afraid of him. During these days when I was avoiding him and not seeing him, I would occasionally miss him. Although he quickly regained consciousness, he was still a prince. High above everyone else, extremely proud. You and I are not from the same world. Because his background is better than mine, right? Whatever you think. But Rachel, with his background, will he marry you? I haven't thought about getting married. I said I want to continue my studies. Let's not meet again, Colin. Rachel. Colin tried to hold me back. But I dodged it. I didn't look at him again, nor did I look back. 21. Compared to Colin's entanglement, Spencer never contacted me again. Until the eve of leaving the port city, local classmates who were on good terms with me organized a party. Facing the impending separation, maybe it will be difficult for us to meet again in the future. Everyone drank some wine. When I went to the bathroom, I encountered two drunk men. At first, I didn't realize that I was being stared at by the two. When I came out of the bathroom, the two men were still standing outside smoking. I began to feel somewhat uneasy. When he came out, he didn't have his cell phone with him and he wasn't wearing a coat. A sleeveless knee-length skirt is actually a very normal and conservative style. But the looks from these two men made people feel very uncomfortable. Sister, I'd like to buy you a drink, would you like to go? Sorry, my classmate is in the room ahead. It's so boring to be with your classmates. Why don't you take me to do something exciting? Two men blocked my way, one on the left and one on the right. I was a little panicked but still calm. The waiter would come over from time to time, and the classmates were not far away. As long as you shout for help, these two people won't dare to do anything they want. But when one of them grabbed my arm, I still felt very uncomfortable. I was just about to shake it off. The man suddenly screamed and flew out, hitting the wall heavily. His companion was also kicked to the ground and stepped on the face. Spencer came over with a gloomy face. He raised his foot and stepped on the man's wrist bone. The sound of bones breaking and snapping was shocking. This is the first time I see Spencer like this. Instead, he has some of the shadow of the ruthless and murderous underworld prince as rumored. I don't want to see them in Hong Kong or Macau anymore. Spencer's bodyguards are very mobile. They were immediately and roughly gagged and dragged out. It was just him and I left in the corridor. Spencer didn't look at me or say anything. I waited for a while and finally thanked him quietly. He still ignored me. I hesitated for a moment, lowered my head, walked around him from a distance and wanted to go back to the box. Spencer reached out and grabbed my wrist. There were still scratches on the forearm from the man's scratches. Spencer's eyes darkened. Spencer. I tried to pull my hand away, but Spencer pushed me against the wall. How long are you going to hide from me? Are you going to run back to the mainland without saying anything? I'm just preparing to continue my postgraduate entrance exams as planned. So you're ready to break up with me? I turned my face away and suppressed the sourness in my heart. There was nothing between us. Actually, that night Spencer said he liked me. I am somewhat happy, but later I avoided him and he stopped showing up. I couldn't help but fall into that mood of self-denial again. Someone who has never been loved or favored. It seems that it is always easier to accept the fact that you have been abandoned. Rachel, look at my back. The back. Spencer didn't say anything, just turned around and faced away from me. The black shirt wrapped around his lean and strong body. I was a little overwhelmed, so I followed his instructions and rolled up the hem of my shirt. Only a part of the waist was exposed, but it was covered with scattered whip marks. I was shocked. Spencer, I didn't contact you during this period because I was recovering from my injuries. Why did you get hurt? Family law, I received 19 lashes. It hurt so much I almost died. If my old man hadn't felt bad for me, you wouldn't have seen me. Why did I get punished? I don't know when my vision became blurred. My fingertips trembled as I wanted to touch the healed scars. But he didn't dare to touch the twisted and hideous scar. Because I don't want a family marriage, I want to marry someone I like. Spencer turned around and wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes with his slightly rough fingertips. Because I think she is timid and conservative. I kissed her a few times. If I don't take responsibility, she will definitely hide and cry secretly. Because I kissed her a few times, but it's not enough. I want to do more, so I might as well just marry her. I didn't say I wanted to get married. My voice choked and tears rolled down my face. I kissed you even though you didn't let me at first. Now that I want to marry you, you have to obey me. Spencer is still as strong and overbearing as when we first met. How can there be someone like you who always bullies me and scares me? Ever since the first time we met. That means I like you. How can you like someone like this? I've never liked anyone before, so of course I have no experience. But I will learn slowly in the future, Spencer said, and before I could say anything, he lowered his head and kissed me. He grabbed my wrists with one hand and pinned them above my head. With his other hand he pinched my jaw and forced me to tilt my face up to accept his deep kiss. Until finally he kissed me so hard that my legs went limp and I couldn't stand. He then released one hand, grabbed my lower back, and asked me to hold my body close to him. During the break of taking a breath, I suddenly saw the door of the box not far away open. A few classmates probably came out to look for me. Rachel. As soon as they shouted, they quickly covered their mouths and turned and ran away. After running a few steps, he turned back and shouted to me. We didn't see anything. My cheeks were burning like red-hot shrimps. You're shy after just kissing me. Will you faint if I really do it? Spencer. Spencer pinched my red face and said, Rachel, marry me. If I don't agree, will you throw me into the sea? My eyes were still red, but there was a smile in them. Spencer seemed to think about it seriously. I can't bear to part with it. Give me some time, please. After a while, Spencer nodded. Okay. 22. After returning from Hong Kong City, I rented a small house and began to concentrate on preparing for the postgraduate entrance examination. But before the peaceful days lasted a few days, His father, who hadn't been in contact for several years, suddenly showed up. The son he had with his stepmother dropped out of school in his second year of high school. After hanging around for a few years, he suddenly said he wanted to get married. The girl's family has a disabled elder brother who cannot find a wife. So the bride price was hundreds of thousands, the purpose of which was to help the eldest brother buy a wife. He and his stepmother couldn't come up with the money, so they thought of replacing the bride. Of course I wouldn't agree. He immediately flew into a rage, beating me and my mother like he did when we were kids. He raised his hand to slap me again, but I pushed him away. He is old and smoking, drinking and gambling have drained his body. I am no longer as afraid of him as I was before. I didn't raise you to this age to let you eat for free. Since you won't obey, I can only tie you up and take you back. He shouted loudly for the person outside to come in, and when I was pulled out by those people, the cell phone thrown under the bed has already dialed Spencer's number. He reminded me before coming back. Put his phone number on speed dial. He knows a little about my original family, so he is always a little worried. Speaking of which, the fate between people is so strange. The man I was once so afraid of that I couldn't even look him in the face. Now when I encounter danger, the first person I think of is still him. And it's not like I've even thought about it. Will Spencer help me? Will he appear like a god descending from the sky as soon as possible? It was as if I was sure deep down that he wouldn't let me have any surprises. I was immediately sent to the small village deep in the mountains. Because the road into the mountain was difficult to travel, we were delayed for a day. At dusk on the second day, the van arrived at the entrance of the village. A black Hummer also arrived at almost the same time. It came whistling in a cloud of dust and blocked the van directly. Several tall and burly bodyguards jumped out of the car first. Next came Spencer, who was wearing a black windbreaker and sunglasses. When his tall and straight figure suddenly caught my eye, my heart suddenly moved violently. The male protagonists in those Hong Kong movies that I chased after when I was a girl. At this moment it was completely materialized. Those people were so frightened that their faces turned extremely pale. Then came the sound of sirens. Spencer strode over to me and kicked away the man who was still holding my arm. And when he saw that my hands were still tied behind my back, the chill emanating from his body made me shiver. I could feel that he was trying his best to restrain himself. Even after the car drove a long way away, Spencer's face still looked ugly. After applying medicine on my wrist, he didn't speak to me again. I raised the rear fender of the car. Like that rainy night when we first sat in the same car. I climbed onto his lap and sat down. She hugged him gently again. Rachel, I'm still angry. I know. I took a deep breath, probably using up all the courage I've ever had in my life. She lifted her face and kissed his jaw gently. I'm trying to comfort you too, Spencer. But he pinched my chin in a somewhat arrogant manner and pushed my face away a little. I'm not that easy to please. Then how do you say I'm going to coax you? Think about it yourself. He let go of my hand and turned away, no longer looking at me. I feel like laughing but also like crying. In the end, she gently lay in his arms. Spencer, let's get married. He still ignored me, but after a few seconds he raised his hands and hugged me. The mountain road was in bad condition and the car was shaking violently. Rachel, stop rubbing against me. It's the car shaking. Before I could finish my words, the car started to shake violently again. I don't know who took the initiative, him or me. Anyway, the car was shaking on the mountain road for a long time. It seemed like Spencer and I had been kissing for that long. 23. 3 months later, Spencer and I got married in a low-key ceremony. Because I still wanted to continue my studies, I begged Spencer for a long time. He agreed not to make the marriage news public and not to hold the wedding for the time being. It allows me to study in peace and low-key. The only prerequisite for agreeing to all this is, although there is no wedding yet, the wedding night is indispensable. On the day of getting the marriage certificate, Spencer took me back to the wedding room. I went to the bathroom but didn't come out for a long time. Until Spencer went over and knocked on the door. It took me a long time to open the door. The clothes and supplies in the new house were prepared in advance by the servants. Maybe it's because today is the wedding night. The pajamas the maid prepared were a little too sexy. I'm too embarrassed to wear such a small piece of fabric outside. But Spencer wore even less. Just a bath towel tied around his waist. Don't faint later. Spencer bent down and picked me up. I was so scared that I quickly reached out to cover it. But the nightgown was too short and too revealing. It covered the top but not the bottom. When we were naked facing each other, I didn't dare to open my eyes. Spencer's kisses moved down. Finally stopped at the top. Rachel. He kissed me softly until I couldn't bite my lip anymore. Intermittent moans escaped from between his lips and teeth. It turns out that our Rachel is not small in every way. Spencer. My cheeks flushed and my eyes were full of spring. Spencer grabbed my hand and moved down. My eyes suddenly widened. Spencer. What's wrong? Why is it different from last time? Which one do you like? I'm scared this time. Spencer suddenly laughed. You really know how to please your man. Afterwards, I seemed to be in a state of fainting for about half a minute. When Spencer kissed me awake, he was already deeply connected to me. Spencer. I just seemed to have had a dream. What dream? He slowed down his pace and asked gently. It was in a wilderness. There was a very thick fog and I couldn't see anything clearly. There's also a big wild beast. I'm scared. I thought I was going to die, but you appeared in my dream. Did I save you? I shook my head and looked at him a little aggrieved. You killed the beast, but you became a more terrible beast, and then you swallowed me whole. Spencer couldn't help but laugh. This dream is not wrong, I really ate you. He kissed me, and his rather nasty movements became more intense. Besides, I'll have to eat it for the rest of my life. End of full text.